Hi, everybody. My name is Hector Lopez, and this is another entry for my blog, Tech Taco Friday. So today, I'm keep going with the flow of Azure SQL databases and Fabric, and I think it's such an important topic. I keep saying that. Actually, if you went and see my last video on this topic, I show you a a feature in Fabric that it's quite new, which is SQL databases in Fabric directly. So I definitely recommend you to check that video out. I've been publishing two on the subject. The first one was just a little bit introductory video on the topic of Azure SQL. Video number two, it's a little bit long. I accept that it's like an hour, something like that, hour long video. But if you wanted to go deep dive into some of the techniques in order to deploy Azure SQL databases, go and check it out. I totally recommend it. I mean, obviously, it would be not very good if I didn't, right? Because I did it. So, but well, the point being is that today there's another topic, and it's a different strategy in order to bring your databases into Fabric. Now, this one, it's quite new, although it's not as new as SQL databases, but it's quite new until just recently. It was in preview, but now it's fully functional. I mean, fully released in the Fabric, and it's called mirroring SQL databases in Fabric, right? So actually, I started working with this one under the erroneous impression that there was something like, I'm just moving my data from an Azure SQL database into this new Azure SQL database, and that there was an Azure SQL database engine in Fabric that was receiving that information, right? I mean, I thought the mirroring was more like the 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 the, the concept that existed in SQL databases called also mirroring, which was basically taking the transaction in one SQL and send it to another. So you kind of replicate the data incoming from one server or one database to another through a log transactioning process. So that's not important. The important bit is that I thought I was that the process. So, but no, it's something different. But you know what? It's not because and I think it's even better, right? It's so cool, and I need to show you how it works because I know that you're gonna love it. Now, I must warn you, and I will say that one to almost at the end of the video, right? Even though it sounds like it's so cool, and actually it is, but there are some limitations that you need to consider. I'm gonna talk about that one because sometimes not every, I mean, you need to be aware of that, right? Okay, so let's get started. All right. Now, what I need to do first, right, is that the scenario is as follows. I have, again, a SQL database, an Azure SQL database that I want the data to be ingested and used in Fabric, right? So that's the scene that or the use case that we are trying to solve. Now, using mirroring in Fabric, it's a concept that it's super interesting because what they do is taking an Azure database, right? And they're using or they landing all that data in a Fabric um, SQL Lakehouse, right? So the conversion, it's completely transparent to you, but behind the scenes, that's what they're doing. They're taking the data in SQL and then migrating or hosting it in a lakehouse and putting a replica of your database through SQL endpoints in top of that, right? So for you, I'm just telling you for you to understand that. I mean, it's for you, it's completely transparent. You will see, and you will see in a second. I'm just giving you some additional information for you to understand what we're talking about, right? And it just will make sense when you see documentation about this one. What is behind the scenes? So that's what's happening. It's not SQL to SQL. It's SQL to Lakehouse, but the complexities of dealing with the changes on schema from SQL to Lakehouse are completely transparent to you. You won't even notice, right? I mean, again, only if you go to documentation, just for you to understand what Microsoft did with this mirroring. Okay, So let's go to the demo, right? Let's go right in. Let's just jump right into what I'm trying to show you. Okay. Now, again, I have a SQL Azure database here, right? I'm using SQL Server Management Studio to connect to the SQL databases, to connect to that Azure SQL database. One little thing that I wanted to show you before I jump into my Fabric environment is that, and we start probably with this, it's not a limitation, it's more like a requirement, right? Is that the database, at least if you pick the standard, the DTU base pricing tier for a SQL database, it needs to be at least 100 DTUs, right? That's the way it is. That's a requirement. And the reason why I'm telling you, but I know, because I was trying to do with I think my database at some point was 10 or 20 DTUs, and I tried to use it as is. And I mean, I got immediately the message that, oh no, you need to be 100 or more if you're on the standard pricing tier. Go to documentation. There's another considerations for B core base purchase model. I don't have it right in front of me. I'm just saying that the database needs to have certain capacity in order for you to mirroring, and you will understand why. It's in a second, right? So that's one thing that you need to be aware. Okay. Now let's go to the provisioning. Now, what needs to happen, right? So the process, actually, that's another good thing about this one. Surprisingly, it was super easy. It's super easy to create one, because I mean, sometimes the mirroring fabric sounds really I don't know, complex, and probably the technology behind it most likely is. But the process of creating it's so simple. Check this out. I mean, we just need to do certain steps before, and I'm going to show you what needs to be done. Okay, so according to documentation, they said that we need to have uh, a login, right, in our server. So again, I'm using my SQL Management Studio, and just be careful if you're not a DBA and you're not familiar with it. This is the way you need to switch database context, right? So remember that even though I'm using my Azure SQL database right here, I was connecting this one, and the server, there's more databases, and one of which is a very important one, is the master, right? So when you're working with SQL Server Management Studio, and basically many of SQL Server management tools, they will allow you to change the context, right? In this case, I need to change my context to my master database to create a Fabric login, right? So I'm going to need to provide a strong password. So I'm just going to take this really quickly, and then I'm going to use my password that I wanted to use. All right, so let's going to do this, and I'm just going to execute. All right, so execute. Okay, there it goes. Yes. So, okay, back to this one. Yes. Okay, so let me put this one back into place, because we need to yeah, we need to show this one side by side. So what I did is, first I create a login, right? So logins are the ones that you're going to show, that you're going to be seeing here. So this is my login, and the login lives above the databases, right? They live at server level, not at database level. At database level, there are users, and you can associate a user that exists within an Azure database with a login. And this is what we're going to do, right? In documentation, the second step that they ask you to do is to create, before that, to this new login, you need to assign or grant the server role server state reader. Now, this role, and I will include more information in the article that I will publish along with this video, it just grants the user the ability to check the status on the server, which is very important for the communication between Fabric and the server, right? Okay, so that being said, those are the two steps that we need to do at master on the master context, all right? The next step is to create a user based on that login, right? Now, the users, again, they live at Azure database level. So I need to change my context from my master to my database. And this is what I'm doing by clicking here. And now I'm ready to execute this commandlet, right? Which is switch your connection. Okay, switch your connection to the source database and grant control permit. So let's pick this one probably. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I didn't have it before that one. And the other step that I needed to do is grant to this Fabric user control over the database, because that user needs to, communicate with Fabric and perform certain operations, and control grant that permission, right? A set of permissions. It's a privilege role within a database, right? It's, let's say, one step behind being owner of the database, right? Just to keep it simple, just for you to understand what you're granting with this control, all right? So I'm granting the Fabric user control over my database. So let's click OK. And now that's it. That's all from the SQL databases. I mean, it's that simple, really. It's that simple. I'm going to show you. Now, let's move to what needs to happen on the Fabric side. Okay. Now, on the Fabric side, what we needed to do is to create what we call a connection, right? So let me just try to put this one again here, because I need to, all right. Yeah. Now, on this side, what we needed to do is to create a connection. How do we do that? Let's go to settings, and then we need to go to manage connections and gateways, all right? So let's go to manage connections at gateways. I already have a connection called MySQL connection or underscore dev. And I'm going to go to my settings, and you will see that my connection type is SQL Server. The server is the one that I have here, as you can see here, right? Authentication methods, you can use SQL authentication, right, which is basic, or auth2, which means using an Azure entry ID entity. Let's say my user, let's say Hector Svenkio at techtechfriday.com. I could use that as well, or a service principal, right? Both three options are perfectly possible. I'm going to stick with the basic, right, which is a SQL, basically the user and password that I just created here. And as we mentioned, I have this login called Fabric. So let's use this one. My username is going to be Fabric, and my password is the one that I defined when I created my user, right? That's it. Okay, let's save this connection, right? So everything worked just well, apparently. So let's close this one. And now we're ready to create our mirror database. Okay, how do we do that? Let's go to my workspace. Let's click new item, and then mirror Azure SQL Database. So let's click OK. And the only thing that we need to do is to change or to pick the connection that we just recently created, or in this case, well, it was already created. I just updated the user and password that I will use. And check this out. Now, the process is telling us which tables do we want to start mirroring, right? So in this case, I'm just going to select all. Just notice that there's some tables with a little, warning saying that, no, you cannot use this one. And it's quite simple. The reason, because I don't have a primary key on these three tables right here. So that's another thing that you need to be aware, is that your database needs to have proper primary keys and foreign keys. Well, in this case, primary keys is the main, the main requirement for you to have your databases being important into or being mirror to SQL. And I'll explain a little bit why that is. Okay, so for the time being, I'm going to select everything. And then, you know what? I'm not going to select everything because probably will take some time. Let me just pick a few with important information. I'm just going to pick my dates and my two fact tables, right? I mean, usually are the important ones, just to make the process quicker, right? The synchronization happening a little bit quicker. Okay, so now that I have the three tables that I wanted to start mirroring, I just need to click connect. I need to pick what is the name of my destination database. I'm just going to call it my Azure SQL database. And boom, let's create a mirror database. Now, what's going to happen at this point of time is that Fabric will create what we call a mirror database. Behind the scenes, if you don't have, behind the scenes, it will create also a lakehouse, right? On that lakehouse, it will create all the schemas, and it will be hosting the database data, right? And it will expose SQL endpoints for you to operate on the SQL mirror Fabric database just exactly as you would expect to do the same operations in your normal Azure SQL. So it's super important. And you know what? It's a very simple, I know, again, I know the technology behind that. It must be complex, but I'm totally amazed and surprised how simple it is and how simple they make this process for you as an end user, right? So let's see how this mirror database is coming along. Okay, so as you can see, now we have our mirror database right here. Let's check the status, right? So let's monitor the replication. Let's see how it goes. So right now it's running. So my replications, it's working. So let's refresh. No data has landed, right? So probably right now it's still working on the replication. So we need to give it a few minutes. Let's go here and see what's happening. All right. So let's go now to my SQL endpoints, which is, okay, SQL Analytics endpoints. So let's click on this one and let's see. So schema, security, we don't have just yet the data, right? So let's keep monitoring. And actually, I'm going to put myself here in the monitoring. Okay, there it goes. Now, finally, it started, right? And actually, I think it just completed. Okay, let's go back to my SQL endpoints because my withdrawals, dates, and deposits already was replicated. So let's go here and let's refresh and let's go to our DBO schema, right? Let's refresh. No. Okay, not yet. Okay, so that means that the replication, it's still, I mean, it says that it started, but probably is not yet completed. So let's see, rows replicated. Okay, so this is the thing. Now, yeah, so now the replication is running, but it says changes may appear until 60 seconds, right? So let's wait a little bit until what's going to happen. Now, probably meanwhile, because we will need a few minutes for this one to be completed, okay? I'm going to show you what are we going to do on this one, right? So first, let me show you what type of data do we have on our database, right? So we have, as you might expect, and if you're familiar with SQL, I'm just showing you a very easy query when I'm grouping by the subcategory of withdrawals, right? So that's an important. The important part is that once we have all our data replicated, right, we're going to remove, and let's see how long would it take for the mirror, right, the process takes those changes in my source database and make it, and mirror to the Fabric SQL databases. So this is the exercise I'm going to do, right? So as you can see here, finally it's done. The replication is complete. So we can go now again to my SQL. Let's refresh. And now we have my fact data and everything here, right? So it's going to have one query here open, right? And let's see, let's create a new SQL query Come on, new SQL query, and let's take the same thing here and here, right? So it's going to run it, and we have the same data in both places, as you can see in just 1 second. Yeah, there it goes, right? What we're going to do first is I'm going to remove all the rows that, that for subcategory number 1. All right, let's do that. So let's delete from this table withdrawals all the ones with the subcategory number 1. So let's execute this change. So 33 rows were removed. As you can see here, now we don't have the number 1. So the question is, how long would it take, right, for those changes to be replicated in our Fabric Mirror SQL? So let's run again. Let's see. Now we have 222. Let's see. Now, done. How long would it take? Less than 1 minute, perhaps? Yeah, it took seconds, right? So as you can see, now we don't have that one. So the replication is already happening. It's actually, again, it's quite fast and very efficient. So if you're operating in one side, unless you're working with extremely sensitive, nearly real-time information, you would even notice. All right. So you're saying, okay, so probably just, I mean, this is so easy because you just remove rows. I mean, I don't think that probably if you wanted to, let's say that you wanted to add a new column, and this is the exercise that I have right here, right? What if I wanted to make changes, structural changes in my source database? For instance, I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to drop the column locked, because as you can see here in the withdrawals, I have this column called locked here, right? I'm going to do 2 things, right? Just to make so evident for you to see. I'm going to drop the column locked, and I'm going to add a new column called in that accept nodes to my withdrawals table. All right. So here you will see that it will disappear. And then again, let's see how well the mirror database handle those type of changes. So I'm going to execute. Now these 2 tables are gone. Or sorry, those 2 columns are gone from this table, as you can see here. So we created a new column and we drop the log column. So again, let's see how well this mirror process happened, and how well and how long would it take for this one to go and process those changes and reflect those changes in our table. So let's see. Okay, let me just refresh this one. And we keep seeing the lock table, so that process is not yet complete. And of course, right, if you wanted to see if you wanted to monitor, and again, I'm just going to do that one, again, going to my experience. If I go to my SQL, Mirror SQL database, and I click monitor replication, you can see when last time the replication is happening, right? So it happened constantly to pick up the changes from your sources. So we can go to the SQL endpoints. Let's refresh. Let's go to my tables and let's see. Yeah, so fact, withdrawals. Let's refresh and let's see. Okay, there it goes. Yeah, it's gone. Now we have our new column here, right? And the log column is gone. Again, a few seconds. I mean, it just took a few seconds, right? So, yeah, so one of the things that I probably would do, the rest just to show you again how easy it is. And let's do this, right? And just for you to see and understand, for instance, one technique, if you have a SQL database that has no primary key, you can create one on the fly if you're not SQL DBA or something like that. I mean, don't worry, it's not that hard. It's really easy. Let me show you. For instance, if I would take this withdrawals SQL table, I'm just going to create a clone of it, right? But by doing this SQL statement, I'm selecting everything from my withdrawals, and I'm creating a new SQL database called withdrawals underscore number 2. I'm going to do this. Just going to click OK. 2009 rows were created. So check this out. Let's say that I wanted to add this one. So it's going to go here, going to my replication. Let me see. Yeah, monitor replication. Yeah, okay, give me 1 second. Yeah, here, configure replication. And then I want to add this new withdrawals underscore number 2. Let's imagine that I wanted to add it as well. So, all right, so we have our withdrawals number 2. But again, right, when I created this one, I didn't add a key, a primary key to this table, right? It's telling you, nope, I cannot do this because it doesn't have a primary key. So how do we fix this? Okay, in our source table, there's a commandlet that calls that it's like this, alter table, the table that I just created, and then I'm just gonna add a new primary key cluster on my column surrogate key, right? And I'm just gonna give it a name. That's it. So I'm just gonna click this one and execute. And with that, I create the primary key on that table, right? It's that simple. I mean, it's not that complicated. So let's refresh this one more time. It's reading from our SQL database, Origin SQL database. And now, if everything works as expected, now we have, and we can import our fact withdrawals number 2. If I apply the changes, right, in a few seconds, since the replication it's already happening, we will see this new table being loaded in a few seconds from now, right? So what do you think? It's super easy. I mean, I'm blown away with how easy really it is for you to make this replication happen. So easy. The options available are, cover 99.999% of the cases that I can think of. So what's the catch? Unfortunately, there's a couple of catches on this one, or limitations at this point of time, which I'm pretty sure Microsoft is going to work about it, but you need to be aware of those ones because everything so far seems so cool, and it is, but you need to understand that it could not necessarily you can apply this one to every single database that you have. Let me explain. One of the limitations that we have is that the databases, as of now, need to exist within your Fabric tenant. So what I'm saying is this one. Right now, I'm using my tenant, and my tenant is named in norway.onmicrosoft.com. That's the tenant that I'm using in order to make this one. Let's say that I have one database in another different tenant, which it's not unusual, right? It's quite common. Those databases are not going to work. Because right now that's a limitation on Microsoft, and I tried. So, for instance, if I would have, let me show you really quickly using another tenant. So let's say that I'm on my company's, right? On my company's tenant, which is Avanade, right? And let's say that I have in my Avanade tenant, again, which is different from innorway.onmicrosoft.com. It's a completely different tenant. And I have a database, which actually I have, right? And let's say that I said, oh, that's so cool. I wanted to bring a database that I have in this tenant, and I have I have all the requisites. It's a database with more than 100 DTUs, and everything looks good. It's awesome. I cannot do it because they're different tenants. So the database needs to be within my same tenant as of now. So that's one limitation. Another case that I thought it was possible as of now, and on my mind is like, oh man, this could solve a lot of my problems, is to being able to expose or to mirror an on-prem SQL database, right? Let's imagine that you have your on-prem SQL databases and you want to take one of those data, right, and import it to Fabric. Unfortunately, I went to documentation and there was nothing on that one, but nonetheless, I wanted to give it a try by doing this and just wanted to show you something that I tried but it didn't work. Is I went to the managed connection gateways and I set my own computer as an on-prem data gateway, right? So the idea was to uh, simulate that scenario in which I have an on-prem SQL databases and then install it on a server on-prem, a gateway, which it was possible, completely with the realm of possible. As you can see here, I install a gateway within my computer. I actually install a SQL server again in my computer to test this one out. And I created a SQL connection, as you can see here. Let me show you to my on premises, right? But unfortunately, and this is where I realized that was a limitation, is that when I wanted to create a mirror database and I tried to pick that connection is not available. So, and then I went to documentation. I realized that the case of mirroring SQL database on-prem is not available at this point of time. Probably Microsoft. I haven't seen that announced in any roadmap, so don't take it into account for your plans as of now, unless you see or hear from Microsoft. They are going to expose that or make it available for you. So, having that said, the rest, for me, it's quite surprisingly, it's really straightforward process as I show you. I mean, I didn't show you, I mean, I did show you everything that needs to be done. Nothing less, nothing more. And so far, my thesis on how mirror SQL databases work just perfectly, I mean, flawlessly so far. Um, Probably, I haven't checked the cost, but probably something that you need to consider as well is that you will have on this, right, on this scenario, your SQL database, you will obviously have to keep paying for your Azure-based SQL databases, and you then will have to pay, or in this case, accept, right, the increase of consumption on your Fabric capacity, right? So you, in a way, increase the cost, the maintenance cost of an Azure SQL database. But on the other hand, if you think about it, you don't have to build pipelines and processes and ETLs or and all that sort of processing for you to bring your database to Fabric. You can do it in a really straightforward manner. All right. How about this? How about a combination that I just show you, or in this case, um, bring your SQL. If you're familiar with your SQL databases, whatever they are, I probably it's easier for you just to move from one SQL instead of, probably you don't want to migrate the whole logic to Fabric, but probably it's easier for you to move from one Azure tenant to another Azure tenant, and then that Azure database being exposed to Fabric. So there's so many options. I leave into your consideration and specific needs. I'm just wanted to tell you how it is and make your decision on this one, but just taking into account for your work, your clients, your needs. This one as an option. It's a very nice option. I totally recommend it. So, with that being said, I will leave you for today. So that's it. That's what I wanted to show you. I hope you find it useful, and I'll see you next time. All right. Bye.